You're listening to the Better People podcast. I'm your host, Tom Warner, and with me is our ever continuing guest, Rhonda Ramirez, licensed professional counselor from Central Texas. And Rhonda, I've got a question for you.
I'm ready.
Can you buy happiness?
Ooh, like on the surface, I would say no. But, you can purchase things that do give you some momentary happiness, yeah. And, I don't know. Let's think about that.
Okay.
Maybe we should kind of step back and decide the difference between happiness and joy. And are we just trying to buy happiness, or are we buying joy too? Because I think as I like to define them, I think happiness is an emotion and a mood that may change quickly, and that, emotions kind of come and go. For me, joy is like a way you view life. If you have a joyous view of life, it doesn't necessarily mean you're happy all the time, but you have this joy within you that is different than just being momentarily happy. So that would be my first deciding factor is, are we trying to be happy, or are we trying to be joyful? Because if we're trying to be joyful, I don't think we can buy anything.
Right. And then a question could be, is it filling a void that you should see, maybe up to seeing a counselor, or that you should seek something else to fill that void? You call them vices sometimes, or, so it's entirely possible to be buying something for the sake of what we call it retail therapy sometimes.
Correct.
The feeling of I've got something new versus can you buy something that is of long-term help?
Correct.
So maybe like a book or some form of something that you can consistently return to that will continue to bring a sense of healthy joy, healthy peace.
Right. Or, specifically you said book, and I'm sitting here looking at stacks of books of things that I want to read about and that I want to learn about. And it's not actually the book that makes me happy, but it's the process of learning that I get from the purchased book that makes me happy, right? Mm. So I personally, I will learn about lots of things. I'm very inquisitive about silly things and serious things. It doesn't matter. So yes, I will buy the books that help me learn, but the learning is the thing that brings me a little happiness. I'm like, well, that's cool. I didn't know that. Something new, So sometimes maybe you can buy stuff that does encourage you in your, emotional state. But again, you're right when you say, are we buying stuff that we're filling a void, or avoiding, or are we avoiding doing something else or feeling some feelings? Like if you're buying new stuff because you like the way it feels when you have new things, instead of dealing with the fact that you're sad about something else, that probably is not going to bring you a whole bunch of happiness. Because we're just trying to fill that space. But if it encourages you in activities and things that give you happiness, then maybe it does a little. I think that's a hard question, don't you think?
Yeah, it's fair. That's fair. I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I have things that I have purchased that I do continue to use. Like I do have an Apple Watch, but I don't have to have the Apple Watch.
Correct.
I don't have to have the iPhone, and I don't have to have the MacBook Air. I don't have to have the iPad. And the question would be, why do you need an iPad if you have an iPhone, or why do you need a MacBook Air if you've got the iPad? And that's fair, and now I use them heavily, and they have helped me in situations. But if I didn't have the money for it, which probably could argue I didn't even when I had them, but I good question. I don't know if this is something we're going to answer today, but
definitely.
I think it's in the eye of the beholder, and it's in the pocketbook of the beholder who makes the makes the purchase. I think if you buy a religious text for the purpose of studying it, and that's in turn going to make you a more a decent person in life and to get to be with, and maybe it's a worthy investment.
Correct.
And so maybe investment's a better, maybe the word we should use is investment. Are you investing in something? Because I want to be cautious that not everybody can afford certain things, and so
for sure.
And yet I know many that are very at peace with that in their life.
Correct.
And we were talking earlier before we recorded, made the comment that we were saying, can money buy happiness? And I said, no, but I do know there are certain financial thresholds I could be at that would maybe take away my problems. And then you mentioned, but then you kind of alluded that you would have new problems that arise from that.
Yeah.
Buying a house, for example, and we don't own a house, we rent, but buying a house for me sounds like a dream. I'm one of those millennials that complains about the housing market. But for me to buy a house, now I have the house. Well, now I'm going to want to put things in the house, and now I've got to mow the yard, and I've got to do things that I wouldn't normally do, and spend money on things that I wouldn't normally spend money on. Now I'm like, if I only had this patio furniture, if I only had a fire pit, if I only had a grill, you just start. So anyways, I still want the house, and I don't think it's a bad thing to have a house. But
no, definitely not a bad thing. But, there's also like the little things like, I have to change my air filter every month. I have to change, these kinds of little things that you don't necessarily think about when it's not your own. And they do cost money. Like, it's a weird kind of thing where you buy something that's going to cost you money eventually. But I guess it's the same thing with a car. But, also, when we kind of step back a little bit further and kind of look at when I visit countries that are less wealthy than our country, generally the population is more happy.
Can be. It can be because they don't know. They don't know what they don't know.
Well, and if we're not focused on things, we're more focused on relationships. And in general, when we're creating positive, healthy relationships, that usually helps our mood, So it kind of depends on where you're coming from. And like you said, when I was living in an apartment or sharing an apartment, I wasn't sad. It wasn't hugely detrimental to me to not, have the things. I just was okay in the place that we were, So I think sometimes we can buy things that encourage our happiness, but it's not always a requirement.
True. And I guess if people want to know the answer, no, you can't buy happiness. We should be very clear. That is the answer to the question. No, you can't buy it.
Absolutely.
But you can supplement, and you can, like I said, there are investments, whether it's in money or time. Buying isn't necessarily meaning the use of a currency. It can be, currency could be investing time into things.
Correct.
You said relationships. You can invest time in relationships, and you're investing yourself into that, or nonprofits, and those in turn can also bring a form of happiness or fulfillment from doing so.
For sure. And so, sometimes I have traveled to several countries that are considered less wealthy than the United States, and I'm just as happy, sometimes even more, because I get to see a perspective that is like, I can sit outside in the evening and enjoy nature and be just as happy as if I'm sitting inside with the air conditioner.
Mm-hmm.
I can, it's okay to sweat a little, to maybe not necessarily have as much diversity in my food. But if it is being made with love and connection, it doesn't necessarily matter sometimes.
Well, right. It's like for me going to grandma's house on Saturday mornings
Mm-hmm.
and after church, you walked in and my grandma was a gardener and she had this, it was one of those unorganized kind of gardens. It was,
Yes.
or foliage. It was basically, here's an area she planted something pretty. Here's an area she planted something pretty. But we would go over there on like Saturdays mornings or Friday nights, evenings, and just sit outside. And it was
Right.
a nice, calming little thicket of foliage that would surround us. The way she had it set up, you'd see fireflies and you'd hear the crickets and then you'd hear of course the cicadas got a little bit on my nerves, but you'd hear the summer sounds. It was usually at summer when we would do that more often.
Right.
And you would just sit outside and she'd light the citronella candles and the little off brand or whatever brand coils that keep mosquitoes away. And we would just sit and talk and that was it. And this is prior to iPhones. Yes, there was a time before that, before Google, before laptops, at least in my generation. We hadn't had those or we couldn't afford them either way. And you just made do with what you had and not thinking about the financial side of it. But I guess if there's a takeaway, it's if you're going to buy something, look for longevity, look for things that are going to bring a continued sense of purpose or give your, from your mind to physical to your mind, to find something that's going to improve yourself versus just to have it because I have it and Amazon showed up at my house and gave me the package. I drive past. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think when you use the word invest, I think that's a really great way to, again, filter kind of what are we using it for? Are we investing in something that actually does help us grow or is part of something that really is something that makes us super excited? Or are we just buying it to fill space because Amazon can bring us everything at any time?
Yeah. Well, I jokingly, when we pass an Amazon truck, I tell my wife, hey, look, the ice cream man's here, because it's the equivalent of, oh, wow, the Amazon truck's in town. What are we getting? And, well, like yesterday, or maybe it was Saturday. I think it was Saturday. What is today? Today is Tuesday because of Memorial Day.
Tuesday.
It's when we recorded this was after Memorial Day. Memorial Day, we went to the pet store to buy our dog a toy. And the dog doesn't care. But the kids, I did it because I wanted to spend some time with the kids. And it's always fun to see them say, I think Spike will like this, and we got him a little hedgehog that I picked out. I want to stay that because he loves that he's been playing with that hedgehog for 2 days now. So I'll take credit for picking out the hedgehog.
Winner,
won. And then we got him some treats. And again, dog doesn't care. He's, oh, cool, new treats, but if even that, but it wasn't so much to spend the money on toys. It was to spend time with the family at the pet store. Tell them no, they can't have the snake, and no, they can't have the bird.
Right. So. But you do get the time.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun because I get to see what my dog might like. Of course, also I will tell you, you can spend a lot of money at a pet store if you're not careful.
Oh, for sure. I went to a pet store once too. Actually, I was going with a friend, and I ended up taking home a guinea pig, a cage, food, treats, all the
stuff. That happens sometimes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, then we go visit a friend, and they raise dachshunds like for I don't you call it to sell, and of course they have the puppies, and the kids are like, Daddy, we want a puppy. I want a puppy too. Yeah. Not spending $500 for a dachshund.
Right.
I'm told that's a good deal.
Right. I don't know.
I don't need this forever. So.
Yeah.
Well, now that we've devolved to talking about pets, I think we may have found the end of our show here. So
I think so.
To kind of sum up, No, you cannot buy happiness, but it can
No.
if it's something the takeaway is if you're going to buy something that's going to have a long-term benefit to you as a person, whether it's mental or physical. If you're in that position, and if you're not in that position to buy something, as you were saying, some places you have been, the country overall seems happier, and you too can be happy. You've just got to find that fulfillment. So
you don't have that stuff.
There you go. So, all right. Well, we'll go and end on that note. Thanks for joining us this evening, or morning, or afternoon, or whenever you listen. For Rhonda and I, it's this evening. So, with that said, visit us at betterpeoplepodcast.com. Also available on your favorite podcasting apps or podcatchers, from iTunes or Apple Podcasts to Google Podcasts, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also drop us an email at hello@betterpeoplepodcast.com. As always, thanks for listening.